Okay, so what you're looking at is the cut guide for the 6-card virtual stamp that we're going to do actually by Zoom tonight. So I know that some of the people in the card club were a little nervous about cutting up their sheet. So I wanted to do a practice run for me. I already did one wrong, so this is take 2. And I thought it would be a good idea to show you guys too. So this is the cut guide, and I'm going to go through one and follow it for you so that you know what to do. So there's 2 pages here. They're both 12 by 12s. So this first one is our pattern paper, our pretty paper. So you're going to use your guide and follow that pattern. So the first thing you need to do is have your 12 by 12 ready. So I have an older sheet, and mine is a tiny bit over 12 because it has this zip strip that Close to My Heart paper has. So that's always a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that piece off. This is not on the cut guide because you need to get it to 12 by 12. So now you have this pretty little piece of accent paper I'm just going to put to the side. And now I have my full 12 by 12. So then you have this pattern, and if your paper has a right side up, it goes in this direction. So this is the top of your paper, this is the bottom. Mine doesn't really matter since the flowers can go any which way, so I'm just going to pick this way. So it doesn't matter. So this is my paper to match my pattern. So my first cut I've marked for you. I had to do a little trickery to get them all to go the right direction. So our first cut is 4 inches from the top. So here's my top. So I'm going to have to turn it to cut off my 4 inches. And then I'm going to keep my paper facing the right way so I don't get confused. So it's still going the right direction, and I'm just going to put it off to the side. And I have that top piece. So I have my top 4 inches. So now I'm going to do the next one that makes a clean cut and do this line, which is going to be 4 1/4 and then by 2. So there's 2 of them. So I'm going to cut it long ways to get this line at 4 1/4. So there's 4 1/4. So now I have that 4 1/4 piece, and I'm going to need to turn it to make 2 2-inch pieces. And there's 2, and there's 2. And then it's easiest to keep track of your pieces if you put them by card. So these both happen to be card 3. So I'm going to make a pile for card 1, 2, and 3 and set those to the side. So those are together in card 3. Then I bring my piece of paper back, and I have the rest of it. So I'm going to go ahead and make my next line. I have more that are 4 1/4. So I'm going to do that same 4 1/4 cut. And then this time each piece is 1 1/2 instead of 2. So I'm going to turn it and do 1 1/2. And I'm going to have to cut this one because I'll have some extra. I want to get the flower on it. And do 1 1/2 again. So that's a scrap. And these 2 pieces also went with card 3, so they go in the same pile as the other ones. And then I have this last remaining square that I'm going to have some scraps from, and I'm going to take these pieces. So I have 2 1.5 pieces by 2.75. So I am going to make sure I have it long enough. Either side will work. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it down to the 2.75 first. So 2.75. And then I need 2 of the 1.5s. So there's a 1 1/2. And there's my other 1.5. And those pieces belong to card 2, so they go in a different pile. Okay, and then I am done with my first 4 inches. So remember, we laid the rest of the paper going the right way, and now we're on the bottom half where we have this line at the long way is 5.5, and then I'm going to have 2 3x5s. So I want to cut this line at the 5.5. Keep my paper going the right way, and now my 5.5s need to be cut into 2 3.5s. So there's a 3.5, and there's going to be a little left over. There's my other 3.5. Get rid of my scrap. And these 2 go to card 2, so they go with these. Okay, making progress. So now I have this little piece, and I think it'll be easiest to cut this line next. So I need to cut 3.25 off the top of this thing. So I'm doing this line from there to 3.5. Whoops, I meant 3.25. So 3.25. Hey, go straight. So now I have my piece, and then I need them to be 2.5 long. And those 2 top pieces go to, oh, they're my first card 1 pieces. And then this last piece needs to be 4.25 by 3. So it is 6 long, it is 4.25. So let's do the, let's see, this is the side that needs to be 4.25. And then there need to be 2 3. So there's a 3-inch, and there's my other 3-inch. And you got to see what happens when I mix up the directions, because I had to make sure I had enough to have the 4.25 by 3. So there's 3 by 4.25. And those were these pieces down here. So also card 1. So now I'm done with this top one. I have all of my pretty paper cut. So then we're going to go to the second one, which I split in half on my picture just because you don't need much of each paper. So this is the white, way less than half. We're actually going to use a full sheet and make card bases out of it. And this half is any color of matching cardstock or other coordinating color, and you can see it's almost half a sheet. So I'm going to grab those 2 pieces of paper. So we're going to go ahead and start with the white, and we're just going to take that 3 inches off. And then, so we have the 3-inch part, and then we're going to do 2 that are 2.25. So I'm going to cut it 2.25. And you can't see that one, so sorry. Cut it 2.25. and then cut the same piece at 2 1/4 again. And those belong to card 1. So they go in the card 1 pile. Extra piece of white is always good. And before we do our matching cardstock, we're going to use this bonus sheet of paper to make 2 card bases. So before we get rid of our white, basically card bases are 2 halves of an 8.5 by 11. So we're going to make this now remaining 12 paper an 8.5 by 11. So I'm taking the short side that I already cut most of off and making it 8.5. And then it was a 12 by, so I'm going to have to cut the inch off to get it down to 11. And now I have a regular piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, so I'm going to cut down the middle of the long side at 5.5, our usual card size. So cut at 5.5. If you have a scoreboard or a scoring tool, you can run it through the middle to score it. I often just fold it in half, line it up with the fingernail, and make sure to crease it really well, and it turns out just fine. So there's 1 card base, and I have the second one to fold. 2 card bases. So I have 2 card bases of my 6 ready to go. And you could easily just take another sheet of white paper or 2 and cut it in half to get your other ones. So now we are done with the white piece, and we're on whatever we used for the matching color. I just said coordinating cardstock, and I actually cheated and used a slightly textured paper, but it matches the gray in my flowers. So that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to start with these 2 bigger pieces that are both 3 by 5. So I'm going to cut to get my 3 inches. So I'm going to cut that 3-inch line. And then I wanted 3 by 5, so I'm going to turn it to cut it to 5 twice. So there's 1 5 and the other 5. And then these also belong to card 1, so they go on my first pile. And then I'm on this line. So I'm going to start with this top part. My biggest piece is going to be 2 3/4 by 2, so I'm going to cut this side down to 2 3/4. So there's 2 3/4. And then out of that 2 3/4, I need it to be by 2 twice. So there's a 2, and there's a 2. And then these are these pieces, these card 2 pieces. So then all I have left is these 4 1/4 by 0.5. So I'm going to cut the length first so I don't have to cut it a bunch of times. So I'm going to cut a piece of this to be 4 1/4. And then turn it back to go the right direction, and I need 4 1/2-inch pieces. 1. Sometimes it's easier to do the small ones on the other side of your trimmer. 2. This is 3. And this will be 4. Okay, so those 4 pieces belong to card 3. And then before we move on, since I have this nifty other half sheet of paper, I'm going to go ahead and make one more card base with my other half. So since I only have half a sheet of paper, I'm going to make it the other half. Remember, one side will need to be 8.5. The other side will need to be 5.5. So this will be the 5.5. And then this will be the 8.5 side. And then I have another half sheet of paper, so fold it in half. I want it to be this way. So now I'm at 3 card bases, and I can make 2 more with another sheet of white. And now that we have all of our papers done, I just want to show you how these kind of go together. So these are the cards in the example I showed you. So there's 1, 2 going that way, and that is card 2. Just happened to be the one I grabbed. So with these new pieces, remember you have all the card 2s together, so you have enough for 2 cards. So the big pieces are going to be these base pieces, and you probably also have 2 sides, so you can choose which way it goes. And then you have the smaller piece of the banner, and I just dovetailed mine. You take a cut in the middle, and then you bring it from the corners in. So there's one of the banners and the other banner. And then the small pieces I glued and I think I dovetailed together. So you can make it match your other piece, or you can offset it however you want. I'm going to do flips. So those are how card 2 would go together. And if you're not ready to build yours yet, it's easy to store. Just stick them in one of your card bases, and you have pieces for card 2. That was the other reason we made a few. So then card 1 in the example was this guy. So here's my pieces for card 1. Again, I have sets for 2. So this cardstock piece, I'm going to use a base to lay it on. So this cardstock piece is this bigger piece, and it just lines up kind of equidistance from either edge, or centered along the edge. And then the larger piece of the pretty pattern paper goes next, and it kind of centers with the same amount from the other edge. And then the smaller piece is this one, and I'm going to flip it for variety, and then it centers with the same amount of border on that side. And then this is what you cut one of the white pieces for the sentiment. Or, as always, you can flip the colors, so you could end up with a bigger piece with the other side, and then smaller piece, and then still your white. So there were my options for card 1, and I'm going to stick them in that base to keep them together. And then what haven't we done? We haven't done card 3 yet. So that was these guys in the example. So that's where I used one of my color bases, and I just decorated the other one. So that was this pile of pieces. So you have the little ones down here. So there's 2 per card. And then your pretty pieces, you have a thicker one and a skinnier one. So I'm just going to alternate them. Flowers on the top, big flowers on the top, little flowers on the top. So over a base, it would look like this. So let's see, I set it up in your instructions that the first line was about 1/4 inch from the bottom, so you would glue that one down. Then you do your big piece and your other little piece, and then center this in the middle, And then if you use a white base, you have room for your sentiment above or below. If you use a light enough piece, you can put it here, like I did on that one, or up here. So you can decorate these, as always, any way you want. So there are the pieces for card 3. And we'll stick all those together in this other base. And if you were cutting the same number of bases as I did, I have 3. I did the 2 out of the white and the 1 out of the pattern paper. So I need 3 more. So I have 1 regular sheet of paper. I'll go ahead and cut that one. So this is my regular paper, 8.5 by 11. Oh, it actually was cardstock. 8.5 by 11. So again, remember to cut your bases. You just cut it in half at the long ones, so 5.5. And then, excuse me, and then fold in half. So that is base number 4 and 5. And I forgot to get out another sheet of paper, so I would need to go find, and I will before our meeting tonight, 1 more piece to cut 1 more base. And we are ready to create. So that's how you turn this into your piles of pieces for your cards. Looking forward to seeing you, or if you are seeing this later and missing the card club, check out the attached link and you can get the card guide that also includes on another side pictures of the inspiration cards and some instructions. And I'd be happy to send those over to you. Thanks guys. Bye.